Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 10th, and here we go. We're still doing this back and forth. We're stuck in this malaise just simply because now the volatility is just intraday. Every time we dip right below that ABM green, we keep coming right back on it. We're still in a soft spot at this point, but as long as the steel is staying above the cyan, we're not getting that crossover sell. We're sort of stuck in this pattern right now because as long as the orange DOC right here lets you know that we're just in a continuation, which is continuation of sideways, which isn't bad. It just doesn't really give us any clarity. We're finally right at the neutral point of the shakeout, which is a bit precarious because at this particular point there's just indecision. Now, we had a reset of the DOC red here, but what you notice with this is the slight increase isn't significant enough to really propel us, but I think we should start to see if we're going to get any kind of movement. Once we get a break above the yellow line up there, 56 range, that's where we should start taking off. I still think that anytime you get to that ABM green 2341, it's a buy above and short below, and then once you end up at that point, then you can start picking in between levels of like the 4750 white, just to lock in gains, and then you redo it on a recycle back and forth. There's nothing you can do when you're in this kind of sideways action, this NASDAQ thing. But again, this is that slow back and forth. You hear a lot of gloom and doom. Everything is about to crash. We're imminent, blah, 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 blah. It's a bunch of yap that really doesn't have any value. Again, Euro's back in this precarious spot. No matter, every time we get to these levels, they try and fight it back, and the central banks have been good at that, forcing a little bit of short cover in that. But they're really still in a very precarious spot, and it's a pressure situation because it really has an impact on U.S. trade, all that kind of thing. But the uncertainties in Europe are only going to grow, particularly as the next 2 weeks come around. And if there's the growing concern of, Le Pen, blah, 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 you can name a Greek, whatever, it all compounds itself. And so this puts a good strain. I know there's been a whole lot of dollar bears all of a sudden saying that, the dollar's going to start rising. I think they're missing what it is now. Sure, we're oversold. We haven't reached a point where there's an automatic turnaround at this particular point. Maybe the orange breaks back out of the range, but at this point we're still in a continuation move. The short that took place all the way back up over here was a straightforward call, and I don't think any of that's changed. The rally in bonds is foolish. This is that deflationary trade that has been going on where they think that just the opposite of inflation, we're going to have deflation. Always an interesting argument. Oil in a nice surge. It's going to be short-lived. I mean, we had the call for it from the buy signals, but is it sustainable at this particular point so far? We're about to see a crossover of steel below. That could start to put a little retrace back into it. But rising shakeout until that flips. It's just following that ABM at this particular point. Gold, despite back and forth, is still going to continue to climb. No question about that one. I think that's probably an easy one. A lot of central banks are scenario of looking for buying up gold in the physical. So here we had from the 5K standpoint. This is really quite interesting because we ended up with the reset going through here. We ended up moving across it. And then we ended up with the short signals developing here as once we got into the flat of the Azure line, which is a little bit further over. I mean, you could take immediately upon the orange on the dropping, but you have the rising Azure. Until that usually flattens out is when it starts to really make the breakdown. So oftentimes you can have a repeat of the high going through there. But decay went right below the 50%, hovering right at the 38. It could pop right back above there. We're still in a continuation on the soft side from there, ending the day. But overall, started to see just a little bit of the turn in the shakeout. So we expect that we should see positive for the start of the next week, which is hours away, so to speak. From a 50K standpoint, it's been pretty clean because the reset here, the nice rise, nothing happened until we reset right back here at the 23%. We retested it, coming all the way back down to the lows, and then started back up above it again. Keep hitting the 50% level right there, and keeps getting rejected. That's critical to watch. So from a broader time frame, without even looking at the daily, you think it moving into the longer time frame here simply gives you added reference as to whether there are breakdowns, because a breakdown here is likely to lead all the way back to the bottom level of that, and minimum it's going to be to the magenta level, which is 23.45 range. So 10 points, that's going to be we're starting to keep that volatility right around that same range. So it's pretty consistent overall. I don't see any huge barriers so far, so we'll just keep going with the trading range as it is until we start to see the indicators break out of a different mode. And when that happens, we'll go from there, and we should start to see some more of the adjustments that I've been making in tying in the long short algo to the ABMs as well as to the fib levels, and then you'll start to see the breakaway of those lines when I send that one out. So that's going to be a nice additional feature. You don't have to necessarily have the fib lines at that point. Plus having the long short algo tied into the ABM already will just make that a little bit easier. I haven't decided if I'm going to convert the yellow into a mix of the yellow and the long algo. Is probably what that'll end up being the blend of. But I'll go over all that when it takes place. No sense in getting ahead of it. As always, though, continue to look for me on the Skype chat. Trade well.